In this video, we're going to go through how to configure your PLCnext for first use. The first thing that we need to do is we need to actually connect to our PLCnext. By default, your PLC will be set to an IP address of 192.168.1.10. Now, because this might not match up with the network that you're on, we need to go and make an adjustment to the IP address. The easiest way to do this is to go to the web management interface. To start, we have to connect our PLC to our computer directly via an Ethernet cable. And then we have to adjust our PC's IP address to match one that's within a range for the PLC to connect to. To do this, we're going to go to Change Adapter Options. Depending on your operating system interface, this may be in a different location. And we're going to right-click on Ethernet and go to Properties. And then what we want to do is we want to adjust the IPv4 address to be within a similar range as our PLC. So we're going to double click on IPv4 and we're going to set this to use the following IP address. By the way, if your IP address is already set to a static IP address, you might want to write down the settings that are currently here so that you can change them back later. For me, I'm set to obtain address automatically, so I'm going to say use the following IP address. And I'm going to set it to 192.168.1.111 and set my subnet mask to 255.255.255.0. Say OK. OK. And now I'm going to open up a web browser. In my case, I'm going to use Chrome and then type in the IP address of my PLC. Now, don't be alarmed if you get a message, as you see here, where it says that your connection is not private. The reason for this is because the PLC itself, in my case, does not actually have a signed security certificate, and we're not connecting via HTTPS. To still connect to your PLC anyways, select Advanced and Proceed. Now, when you first come to your PLC, you may see an interface that looks like this. This is what they call the welcome screen. If you don't want to see the welcome screen every time you connect to your PLC, you'll want to select Do Not Show This Page in the Future and go directly to WBM. Then, once we select Easy Configuration, we go to the WBM interface. Now we need to log into our PLC. To do this, we're going to use the default username of admin and the default password, which is printed on the face of our PLC. And now we are at the default web interface. To adjust the IP, we need to go to the Configuration tab, select Network, and then adjust the IP address under Configuration here. I'm going to change mine to 41.91 because that is the range that I'm working with. And I'm going to set my default gateway to be within range so my PLC can connect to the internet later on. Then when we say apply and reboot, the PLC will reboot and it will be on that new IP address that you've set. Be sure to double check and make sure that you've got your IP address typed correctly, because finding your IP, if you happen to set this incorrectly, can be quite a pain. Once I say apply and reboot, the PLC will reboot. This takes a couple of minutes. And once we're done, we should be able to connect on the new address. And through the process of movie magic here, my PLC has now rebooted. And if I change my IP address here to be 41.91, which is my new PLC's IP address, and providing that I have the correct Ethernet cable plugged into my PLC, which I did not, we should now see that same error message because we've gone to a new address. Say proceed. Log in again. And now we have our PLC configured on our local network. The next thing we'll do in configuring our PLC for first use is to change the user password for the admin user and add a new user to be used in future. From the web management interface, we're going to go to the security tab, go to user authentication, and we're going to begin by adjusting the password for the default user because it's bad practice to keep the default user password. So we're going to select set password and type in the new password that we want. As long as we have our password set correctly, press save. And now we can add an additional user. In this case, we select add user, type in the name of the user that you wish, and then we can say add. Now, when you create a new user, by default, they don't have any roles, so they aren't able to do anything, including signing into the web interface. To give them permissions, we have to say edit user and give them a particular role from the user list. For this user, I'm going to give it a admin user level, and then we're going to say save. Keep in mind that it is not best practice to give a user an admin level of access unless they actually need it. In the Phoenix Contact documentation for the PLCnext online, you can actually see a description of the various different user roles, as well as the permissions that are associated to them. Next, let's take a look at how to update firmware on our PLC. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to update the firmware to the most recent version of firmware because this PLC is not yet in production. So now would be the time to update to the firmware version that we're utilizing within our scenario. In my case, I would like the most recent version of firmware. So I'm going to show you how to go about downloading that and how to install that firmware. The first thing that we want to do is we want to go to the web management interface and we want to make note of the firmware version that we're currently running. In my case, this PLC is currently running 2022.0.4. In addition, we also want to look at the model number of the PLC that we're working with. In this case, I'm using the 2152. Next, if you go to the Phoenix Contact website for your particular country and type in AXCF and select the model of processor that you're working with, in my case, the 2152, scroll down until you see firmware. And for me, I'm going to download 2025.6 and then say download. Now, I highly recommend anytime you're updating firmware on a controller such as the PLCnext that you read the notes that come with the firmware. So in this case, when I downloaded my firmware, it put it in the downloads folder for me, and I've unzipped the file. And inside the directory, Phoenix Contact includes the change notes. I highly recommend that you read those change notes so that you're familiar with what changes may have been made and you know whether or not it's going to affect any of your operations that you have in place. We're going to go back to the web management interface for our PLC, expand administration, select on firmware update, hit browse, and locate that RAUCB file. In my case, it's under downloads. (2025_6). And then we're going to say open. Once this is ready to update, hit the Start Update button, and then wait for your firmware to update. This can take some time, so be patient and wait for your PLC to fully boot before trying to reconnect to it. Don't be concerned if this takes quite some time for your PLC to do the update. Just be patient, and once your OK light has come on your PLC again, we can refresh the web page. And now we get this nice new login page. There's a lot of things that have been changed during this particular firmware update from 2022 up to 2025. I'm going to use my user that I created earlier. And as you can see, we've got a lot more information available on our primary page. A lot of the user interface has changed, including we now can see which user is logged in. We now have our diagnostic indicators as they're viewed on the front of the PLC available here as well. And most of the location of things have stayed the same under our navigation tree on the left here. If you're looking for the location of firmware updates under this new interface, you can find them under System, Update, and this is where you can do your firmware updates in the newer versions. One last setting that I like to change is I like to turn off the Profinet device internally on my PLC because I'm not currently using it, and I don't like the fact that I have this BFD light blinking constantly, stating that it has a failed connection with a Profinet device. In order to adjust this, I'm going to go to System, System Services, and if we scroll down here to this Profinet device, we can simply turn this Profinet device off, and that will get rid of that annoying red error light once we hit Save Page and Restart. We'll wait for the controller to reboot, and once the controller reboots, we should see that light is no longer on. We'll say navigate to the login page, log in with our user, and as you can see, that BF-D light is no longer flashing red. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.